Our story opens up in July of 1998. S.T.A.R.S Alpha Team was sent to investigate the disappearance of Bravo Team. Bravo Team, who was sent to investigate Spencer Mansion on the outskirts of Raccoon City due to some strange events and attacks being linked to the old isolated mansion in the Arkley Mountains. After Bravo Team failed to check in, Alpha Team members Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Barry Burton, and S.T.A.R.S Commander Albert Wesker set out with chopper pilot Brad Chickenheart Vickers to find the missing teammates. You'll see in a moment why Brad got the nickname Chickenheart. After landing, Joseph finds our number one on the kill count. It's Bravo Team chopper pilot Dewey, who seems to have been mauled to death by what? We'll find out here in a second. And Joseph ends up as our number two on the kill count, being attacked by the same infected dogs. Jill watches on in horror, being frozen in place, as one of the infected pooches notices her, and is looking for a second helping of that sweet, delicious human meat. Human meat. But just before getting a taste of the Jill sandwich, the dog is shot in mid-jump by Chris. But the infected dogs are still craving a third helping of human meat, so they give chase to their surviving members. Brad Chickenheart Vickers lives up to his nickname and flies off, leaving his fellow S.T.A.R.S members to fend for themselves. But just as the dog was about to take a bite out of Chris's rock-punching arm, Wesker ex machinas a bullet into the zombie dog, who lets out a monkey noise in disapproval. I'm sorry, what was that noise? Yeah, that sounds like a monkey to me. The survivors make like a tree and get out of there, running to the mansion for presumed safety.
Now why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
It's leave, you idiot. Make like a tree and leave. You sound like a damn fool when you say it wrong.
This is where we enter the survival horror. Boom, boom, boom. But only 3 of the 4 members make it to the main hall. Chris is missing for some reason that's never fully explained. A gunshot rings out. Barry and Jill go off to investigate, thinking it's Chris. Wesker, who's the obvious traitor, who stays behind to try and look cool with his nighttime sunglasses on, to, in his words,
I'll secure this area.
Secure the area. So Jill and Barry leave his bitch ass behind and go check out the sweet digs on the road. Barry finds a puddle of blood in the dining room and feels a strange urge to look at it for more than 5 seconds. Unlike a normal person who'd be like, yep, that's blood. Not Barry. So Jill goes off and investigates on her own, coming across our first zombie who's on a dinner date with Kenneth. With the zombie's dinner interrupted, he turns around and gives the iconic head turn. Oh my god, so cool. Jill runs back out to Barry, who for some reason is still super interested in the blood puddle. She tells Barry it's a monster, and Barry drops the zombie with a few shots from his big Colt. But since this is not 1998 and Zombieland hasn't been made yet, Barry forgets to rule number 2 the zombie and walks off with Jill to report their findings to Wesker. And just as the pair are about to reach the door, you can hear the zombie get up and head back to his tasty, tasty Kenny sandwich. Barry and Jill walk into the main hall and, surprise, surprise, their Matrix lookalike leader is nowhere to be found. Barry comes up with the bright idea to split up and cover more ground because it's a horror game and sticking together would be smart, giving Jill the master of unlocking a lockpick before sending her off on her own in a house full of hungry cannibal zombies. What a smart idea. Jill, not listening, goes up to the 2nd floor where she's almost shot by Barry because she can't follow simple instructions to stay on the 1st floor, because even trained professionals in the S.T.A.R.S community keep dying because they can't listen to simple instructions. Barry finds our number 4 on the list, Forrest, who, even though has been dead for no more than a few days, looks like he's been through one too many Weekend at Bernie's sequels. Forrest was apparently pecked to death by a murder of crows, pun intended, and though he later comes back and you have to kill him, for lack of a better word, twice, he only goes on the count once, and I'm not going to show it because editing is hard. Jill and Barry split up again, and Jill runs into Richard, who in his words was bitten by a big poisonous snake. Biggest understatement ever. We waste 3 minutes running through the mansion to get back to him and give him a vial of anti-venom. And because S.T.A.R.S members have the IQ of a raisin, Jill forgets to get a vial of anti-venom for herself. That will come into play later. Jill gives Richard the cure. Even though his arm is turned into beef jerky, he appears to be fine. Jill, the master of unlocking, is curious about the size of Richard's snake, so she goes off to look for herself. And what she finds is Richard's horrible lack of proper definition of the word big. Herman the snake, I don't know if that's what I call him, I guess. His name looks like a Herman. Well, Herman decides he wants to try Jill's sandwich for himself. But Herman is a good boy who listens to his mom and doesn't have a new meal when there's leftovers still in the fridge. Richard says, "Screw you, Jill, for running and getting me a vial of anti-venom. I'm gonna die either way." And Richard ends up as number 5 on our list. Idiot. After defeating Herman the Snake, Jill goes to the outside area, to a guest house or groundskeeper house. I don't know what the hell it is. It's just outside the mansion. Brad comes through on a radio that Richard gave her, and for some reason, Brad is able to be heard by Jill, but Jill can't be heard by Brad. Surprise, surprise. Anyway, Jill enters a small house in a huff, and just before she's about to open a door on the inside, gets knocked out by a beast called Lisa Trevor. Lisa Trevor knocks her out, drags her over by the fire, but instead of trying to kill her while she's unconscious, waits for her to wake up so she can try and kill her while she's conscious and is able to fight back for some reason. Anybody who's anybody knows that ammo is limited and said fuck this bitch and ran away. In the process of running, Jill stops. She stopped because she hears Barry talking. And you can hear a muffled other voice, but it's never really revealed who it is until later. Spoiler alert, it's fucking Wesker. Anyway, after all this, Jill decides to walk in on Barry, who claims that he was talking to himself and it's all due to old age. And Jill, because we already visited this in the past, has the IQ of a raisin, somewhat believes him, and miraculously, for some reason, after seeing all the zombies, monsters, demon dogs, and gigantic snakes, they split up again, and Jill goes underground to a gigantic Shark Tank thing, and no, it's not the TV show, it's the actual Shark Tank, and she has to drain the water to get to the lower parts that are now blocked because the tank is ruptured. After draining the water, Jill passes by one shark. We're going to name him Bruce 1. He's flopping his little heart out, but you know what? We're not going to put him on the count because we don't put animals or zombies or monsters or anything like that on the count. It's just a lot of shit to go through, so, you know, Bruce 1 can flop his heart's content there. Anyway, she passes by Bruce 2. I don't know why I'm calling him Bruce 2. He's bigger. But Jill decides, you know, there's an item over there that I need, so, you know, fuck this fish. And she pushes an electrical junction box into the water, shocking the shit out of Bruce 2. So she gets her much needed item. She walks by Bruce 1, who's still flopping to his content. She says, fuck that fish, and walks through the door, leaving Bruce 1 to flop to his fate.
Fish are friends, not food.
After Jill leaves with her item at the cost of Bruce 1 and Bruce 2, she gets wrapped up by a tentacle dick monster, because this game was made in Japan, and they're really into that shit for some reason. Barry X-Machas his way into the situation with the flame tosser for some reason, never really explained how he got it, and absolutely disintegrates the tentacle sex monster. Just in the nick of time, to the dismay of a lot of kinky people everywhere. Don't worry, I'm pretty sure if you search online you'll be able to scratch that itch. I mean, Rule 34 exists for this very reason. Anyway, after chatting with Barry for a little bit, they decide to split up again, shocker, and Jill randomly runs into Wesker, shooting his gun down a random hallway. Perfectly normal. He talks his way out of it, saying that he was doing it to scare off some monsters, because everything we've seen so far shows that those are how the monsters react to gunfire. They totally could be scared off. Yeah, not suspicious at all. However, we soon find out what, or I should say, who Wesker was really shooting at. It was Bravo member Enrico, the last surviving member of the Bravo team, aside from Rebecca Chambers, who we don't meet in Jill's story. Anyway, Enrico is about to reveal the identity of the S.T.A.R.S member who was a traitor, like we don't really know already. But the mystery Black Boot guy shoots Enrique, making him his number 6 on our list. But the Black Boot man runs off before we get a good look at him. Jill makes her way deeper underground and runs into Barry. Again, Jill's raisin starts actually working and questions how Barry always seems to be ahead of her, without keys and puzzle pieces, and decides to stick a gun in his face and demands him to hand over the cheat codes he's been using. Answer the questions that she has. The mother face-wearing Lisa Trevor is back, and Jill decides to give him the Game Shark, his gun back. At last minute, Jill's raisin, firing on all cylinders, decides to solve a puzzle in the middle of a boss fight, revealing the remains of Lisa Trevor's mother. Not satisfied with wearing just her mother's face, Lisa Trevor grabs her mother's skull and then jumps into the pit from the Golden Child.
There's the ground! There's the ground, Monty! There's no ground here!
After continuing deeper down into the underground lab, which is a staple in every Resident Evil game, Jill finds a slideshow revealing not only all the monsters that she fought up to this point have been made on purpose by Umbrella, but that, are you ready for this shocker? Wesker, yes, Wesker was behind everything.
I know, right?
After going even deeper down, at this point, we're past hell and we're about to pop up on the other side of the fucking planet, she meets back up with Chris, who up until this point has been reenacting his favorite scene from Metal Gear Solid, kinky bastard. After a short conversation, Chris deadpan says the dumbest line in the entire game.
Hey, no sightseeing though.
Yeah, that's what she's gonna do. Go sightseeing. Fucking moron. Just for that shit, I'd leave his ass rotting that cell for Black Boots to deal with. Wesker. I can say his name now. Wesker. That's what I mean. After leaving Chris behind to go sightseeing, she runs into, you guessed it, Barry again. And they go down. Again. Fuck, is this game almost over yet? So you get to the underground lab and see Wesker typing away at a computer. Barry points a gun at you, and again, it's not a shock because you already tried to do it once before. Wesker is holding Barry's family hostage and using them to control him. Wesker orders Barry away and pistol whips Jill before going on his mandatory villain monologue. Barry says, "Fuck my family," and comes back and saves his friend, shooting Wesker and asking for forgiveness. Oh, isn't that sweet? But again, Barry forgets Zombieland survival rule number 2 and doesn't double tap Wesker. And Wesker gets up and hits the drain button on his freakishly large naked man baby thing, and it busts out of the glass case. Why it didn't do that before, I don't know. Wesker, with his science boner, thinks that it will just kill Jill and Barry, but
Surprise, motherfucker!
Wesker is the first one to get his comeuppance, and yes, Wesker is going to go on the list here, because the only reason that he's in the next games is because he purposely infects himself, so yeah, the human version of Wesker is dead. A small basement fight ensues with the Tyrant, and Jill finally drops the big behemoth with a few well-placed dick shots. After Jill drops the Tyrant, she wakes up Barry because the poor guy was all tuckered out after getting bitch slapped. They look over and see that Wesker's body is gone, but like I said, he's only alive because he infected himself on purpose to escape, so he's going to stay on the count. Jill and Barry rescue Chris from his Metal Gear Solid prison, and all three of them enter the elevator and finally go up for a change. But before reaching the rooftop, Chris and Barry decide to stay behind for some weird-ass reason, and literally they only stay behind for a couple of seconds. You'll see here in a little bit. Anyway, Jill reaches the rooftop. Jill fires some magic flares in the air so the pussy chopper pilot Brad can come back to the rescue. For some reason, he was still flying around the mansion for hours and hours with no sign of life. Maybe he heard some explosions or something, but anyway, he comes back. Chris and Barry show up quickly after the flares go up in the air. Kinda makes me wonder why the fuck they decided to stay below for 30 seconds. The Tyrant gets jealous and lonely and decides to join the rooftop get-together and bust through the floor like the fucked up version of Kool-Aid Man. Somehow, Chris gets swiped in the chest full force. There's blood and everything. The same kind of hit that killed Wesker, but is nothing to the Raccoon City rock puncher. Brad, somehow still flying the chopper, has the ability to toss down a rocket launcher Arnold Schwarzenegger used in Commando. After picking it up and allowing the Tyrant to get a free hit on Jill, Jill turns around and says, "You want stars? I'll show you stars." Okay, relax. I know that was Resident Evil 3, just a joke. This whole video's a joke. Just breathe. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. Jill, Chris, and Barry fly away with the sissy Brad, the chopper that should have never left in the first place. They get a nice aerial view of the mansion blowing up, and just since this is my video and it's a joke and nobody really cares, we're going to put Rebecca Chambers as the 8th and final victim because she's not on the chopper and she's never heard from again after this game. After this, all tuckered out from a big adventure, Jill lays her head on the rock puncher's shoulder and falls asleep. But once they land back at the RPD, their surviving members collectively yell and scream at Chief Irons, and he's got a "I'm getting too old for this shit" look on his face. So there you have it. 8 confirmed kills in the first remake of Resident Evil. Our story starts off in late September of 1998, with Sloppy Joe the truck driver listening to the radio and eating his namesake, when the radio signal breaks up and Joe inflicts some gruesome, distracted driving on a woman walking out in the middle of nowhere. But this woman doesn't go on the kill count because she's a superhuman zombie. I say she's superhuman zombie because she's still in one piece and wasn't turned into a meat slurpee by the semi-truck. Which leads us to Leon, one of the heroes of our story, is now stopping off at a gas station just outside Raccoon City. While fueling, Leon notices that there seems to be nobody around. But there is, however, an Arkley Sheriff's car on scene with the door left open. Leon's rookie cop senses start tingling when he looks down and sees that there's a trail of blood. But unlike Barry Burton, only needs to look at it for 3 seconds before moving on. Walking inside, Leon notices that the power is out and, again, there appears to be nobody around. But he also finds a flashlight. Hey, free flashlight. Leon follows the blood trail to our first official number 1 on the kill count, this gas station clerk guy, who dies from a zombie bite on the neck. But he's helpful enough to give us a point in the right direction before he dies, which is right to number 2 on our kill count. Arkley Sheriff Daniel Cortini, who was turned into a human lunchable by a zombie. After a few well-placed headshots to the face, Leon walks out from the back room into a flood of zombies. Leon, making his way to the exit, runs into the second hero of our story, Claire, and for the only time in the entire game drops a zombie with a single headshot. They make a run for the sheriff's car, and luckily he still has the keys in it, and they drive off to what they think is safety. But we all know they are very, very wrong. After arriving in Raccoon City, our pair of heroes is swarmed by zombies. They're about to back out of the horde until we get a cameo from our favorite truck driver, old Sloppy Joe himself. He's looking a little worse for wear, but Sloppy Joe slams full force into the police car, flipping his fuel truck on its side. That's where Sloppy Joe becomes our number 3 on the kill count in an off-screen death due to an explosion. I guess we could say Sloppy Joe was fully cooked. Okay, moving on. Leon walks into the RPD where it's quiet. A little too quiet.
It's Raph! Yeah, a little too Raph. You guys!
After looking at a weirdly high-quality video camera feed, I mean, really, look at this. This is back in 1998. There are security cameras today that don't look that good. But anyway, Leon heads to the east hallway to save camera guy. After crawling through a wet, sticky, bloody floor because the shutter's acting up, and walking past probably what would be the worst level in Viscera cleanup, we arrive at another hard-to-open shutter. This seems to be a thing in this place. While trying to pull the weird camera guy from underneath the shutter, he becomes number 4 on our kill count. This is Officer Elliot, who was torn in half like a movie ticket. But hey, free book. Leon makes his way back to the main hall, and this is the RPD, so 2 things that the RPD is not lacking are crappy shutters and zombies, and both become a big problem for Leon. But thankfully, Lieutenant Marvin comes to the rescue and crushes the zombie's head like Gallagher does to watermelons.
We're gonna start with the watermelon!
After saving Leon from a quite literal ankle biter, Marvin offers a bloody hand to help Leon get back on his feet. Okay. Needing a new outfit and some hand sanitizer maybe, Leon changes into his iconic RPD outfit that for some reason no other police officer in the entire place has the same uniform. Marvin gives Leon a knife and some advice.
Don't make my mistake. If you see one of those things, uniform or not, you do not hesitate. You take it out, or you run. Got it?
Then Leon walks over to another shutter and says the iconic line from the trailer. After walking down a long dark hallway, we come across one officer whose face got turned into lasagna, and another officer who's just hanging out. But these 2 won't go on the kill count because we don't see what happens to them until Resident Evil 3. After exploring a little bit more, Leon gets a radio call from Marvin telling him that there's something he needs to see. After returning to Marvin, he shows Leon another weirdly high-definition video on a Windows 98 based laptop. After hearing a helicopter crash into the side of the building and finding Claire, the 2 have a short yet slightly flirtatious conversation, and nobody seems to give a flying fuck about the chopper pilot Pete. That's what I'm gonna call him. Which is why he ends up as number 5 on our count via death from explosion. The explosion was basically a dinner bell, and the better couple have to split up for a second time. That's right, I said it. Fuck you, Ada. After finding more puzzle pieces and unlocking Chief Iron's secret underground sex dungeon, Leon wakes up Marvin in his final conversation with him, Marvin saying it's too late for him and pulls a gun on Leon, telling him to just go on ahead. And since this is the final time we see Marvin alive, he becomes number 6 on our silly little kill count, dying from viral infection. Fuck you, Brad. After getting into another elevator and going down because this is a Resident Evil game, you run into this really weird looking dude named William Burton. The guy with the worst case of skin herpes I've ever seen. After burning through 90% of your ammo on this literal definition of an ammo dump boss, he joins Lisa Trevor in falling down in Resident Evil. They're never-ending black pits that just go nowhere. But, as we all know, this is Resident Evil, and
He'll be back.
after climbing up to the parking lot and walking over to another needlessly complicated shutter, Leon gets a visit from Chewie the infected police dog. A gunshot stops this bad boy from taking a bite out of crime. The shadow lady tells Leon to look out, and Leon double taps little poor Chewie. After a short standoff, we find out the shadow lady has a fake FBI badge and her name is Ada Wong. After a few snarky words, Ada triple taps Chewie, poor dog. I'm convinced this dog is half Terminator at this point. Ada walks off and Leon follows, not finding her but finding a hipster reporter named Ben. Ben was locked into a cell by Chief Irons and Leon refuses to set Ben free. Leon has a problem. He needs to get that shutter open, he needs a key. Ben has the key. And just as Leon is about to reconsider, X gonna give it to Ben. and punches a hole through the wall, grabbing Ben and crushing his head, popping his eyeball out. That makes Ben number 7 on our count, and arguably the most gruesome kill of the entire Resident Evil franchise, at least in my opinion. After solving the pointless puzzle and getting the key card, just as Leon enters the main parking area, Mr. X Kool-Aid Mans his way through the wall and gets Leon in a David Carradine-esque chokehold. Ada, Terminator 2's Mr. X back through the Kool-Aid Man-sized hole in the wall. Just as Mr. X is about to get a second wind, he starts to push the SWAT truck away. An explosion rings out, and Ada and Leon make like a tree and leave. See, I could say it right. After getting to street level, Ada pulls a Jill Valentine and breaks out a lockpick, breaking into Kendo's gun shop. But Kendo doesn't enjoy these late night intruders, so gets into a 3-way standoff, and just before everybody reenacts their favorite scene from the Desperados, Robert Kendo's daughter walks into the trio. Kendo, not wanting his daughter to suffer from the infection, takes her inside, asking for privacy. In the middle of Ada and Leon's argument, a gunshot is heard, and through this off-screen, thankfully off-screen, we can assume that Robert Kendo mercy kills his daughter, and then presumably himself. So we're going to add 2 very depressing numbers to our count. Ada and Leon move on to the mandatory sewer level and get their first sight of Herman, the snake's bigger, hungrier cousin, Mater the Gator. Even after seeing this, Leon literally jumps feet first into Mater the Gator's sewer, and Mater gives chase to Leon, nipping at his heels, and for some reason, Leon must either have the best grips on his shoes or he's fueled by pants-shitting fear, because he actually can run really fast in waist-high water, outrunning the Jurassic Park-sized gator. But just before the gator gets to enjoy his midnight snack, Leon rides the world's most disgusting slip and slide, and Mater the Gator bites down on a gas line, and Leon says, "You want stars? I'll give you stars." Again, I know that's Resident Evil 3. Ada, for some reason, didn't have to go through all the shit and piss, and lowers a ladder down to Leon. I don't know why we didn't take the same path that she took, but, you know, hey, video game's got a video game, I guess. After a small, short conversation, we run into the world's worst mother, Annette Birkin. After Ada pulls a gun on her and demands a sample of the G-Virus, Annette turns a zombie into an infected barbecue distraction. Ada gives chase, Annette opens fire, and Leon, being ever the hero, takes a bullet, saving Ada. Ada returns fire, but since she suffers from stormtrooper-itis, misses every shot. Ada patches up Leon and lets the poor guy sleep off his gunshot wounds, and she gives chase to Annette. But Annette is a master of the board game Mousetrap and locks Ada inside an incinerator. Ada uses her Ex Machina tech gun to set herself free. Ada gives chase once more, but Annette wants to play a different game called Whack-A-Mole. Ada somehow pulls an Action Jackson and finds her way to safety. After escaping from Annette, falls asleep in a pile of trash with a broken shard stuck in her leg. I hope you got your tetanus shot, Ada. Leon wakes up from his bullet-induced nap. He searches for Ada, finding her behind a locked door. And to unlock it, you need to solve a needlessly complex chess puzzle. Imagine being the locksmith in Raccoon City. That would be the shittiest job ever. I mean, shittier than the shit you just ran through to get away from the big-ass gator. Leon, before going off to find the puzzle pieces, puts in a tape for movie hour. Tape is a shoulder cam of an Umbrella Merc watching as a infected William Birkin gives his buddy a bloody high five, and after doing so, William Birkin walks over and curb stomps the camera, adding 2 more to our count. After the movie, Leon goes off to find the bullshit chess puzzle pieces, and after finding the final one, old Billy Birkin himself shows up and, just like his wife, enjoys a good old game of Whack-A-Mole. You're stuck in a room, and this is yet another ammo dump boss fight. After besting the herpes monster on his own game, you gotta run from Birkin until he comes to a platform that seems to have no other purpose other than to knock big-ass monsters off of the platform you're standing on. And, well, that's what you do. You knock him down the first time, you push the button again, and you knock him off completely. And he falls down yet another Lisa Trevor-esque bottomless pit. Leon finally finds Ada and does what he's been wanting to do since he met her and pulls out. Leon and a limping Ada get on a super secret tram that goes to an underground lab because Resident Evil's got a Resident Evil, yo. The RPD apparently hires people only who have an incredible incapability of critical thinking because Leon doesn't even question how Ada, an FBI agent, has a digital wristband that enables the super secret tram to work. Ada sees Leon's attention boner and decides to use him as a pawn, sending him off to get the sample all on his own. Manipulating the rookie cop with a kiss because the power of boners, I guess. Leon finds another tape in the nest, and this tape shows the Umbrella recovery team led by Mr. Death himself, Hunk. The Umbrella team shoots the ever-loving shit out of William Birkin, who is number 12 on our list. And yes, I know, he's still running around, but he only saves himself with the virus, a lot like Albert Wesker. So the human form of William Birkin will be number 12 on our list. Leon finds the G sample and removes it from the housing, and what could be seen as an oversight by the engineers or maybe an overreaction by the Nest AI, it goes into self-destruction mode because again, Resident Evil has to Resident Evil. Leon tries to make his way back to Ada with the sample, but is stopped by a bigger, badder version of Billy Herpes Birkin himself. Annette comes out of nowhere and shoots an acid round from a flare gun for some reason. And just when the monster looks to be down and out, Annette forgets to double tap him because everyone forgets to double tap. But she still has enough time to go through a flashback sequence where we find out that yes, Birkin purposely, in his final moments, infected himself with his own G-virus, transforming him into the monster that you've been dumping all your ammo into every time you see him. But William's still going to stay on the count because the G-virus essentially turned him into a separate being. As the story ends, the herpes monster wakes up just in time, and what will be the last incident of domestic violence, Birkin tosses his wife, also Birkin, into the wall, and that must have given him enough XP because William Birkin levels up and gets a fourth arm. Annette lowers you and her herpes-ridden husband into a lower level for another ammo dump boss fight. Her excuse for this is,
Can't let him get away!
Like he's unable to jump or climb or whatever he did to get here in the first place. After fighting him for a really, really long time and dodging fuel tanks that have homing technology for some reason, you drop the monster again. After riding a mini elevator back up to Annette, she says what anyone with half a brain has already been thinking.
You trust that bitch?
After catching up with Ada, who somehow made it to the escape platform without a problem apparently, Ada asks Leon if he got the sample, and instead of lying, he tells her the truth. After asking to verify, Leon finally snaps out of his boner daze and gets in a standoff with Ada. Finally. But since Leon still likes Ada for some reason, and some way knows that with the power of the boner, Ada won't shoot him, even offering to allow her to do so, but for some magic story reason, Ada doesn't give in and shoot Leon like probably anybody would in her position. For some magic story reason, Ada doesn't give Leon another bullet hole, and out of nowhere, Annette fires a bullet from the movie Want It, because somehow it bends around Leon and hits Ada in the shoulder, before succumbing to her injuries and becoming number 13 on her list. Ada falls over the rail, getting saved by Leon at the last second. The employees at Capcom really think we like Ada and try to give us a touching moment, but Leon says fuck you bitch and lets Ada fall down the shaft from Star Wars. Leon moves on and gets on the elevator and goes down because, again, Resident Evil. After walking into a small control room, Leon sees the girl that should be his soulmate, and she's on the escape platform too. Leon, not wanting to let another pretty girl escape through his fingers, pushes onto the train. But it's been a few hours since we've seen the Mr. X Kool-Aid Man, and he makes an appearance and chases Leon as the entire place is exploding all around them. Leon gets on another elevator and goes down again, Seeming to have gotten away, another explosion happens, and now a half-naked Mr. X wants to hitch a ride on Leon's elevator. After wasting all of your remaining ammo and nothing happens, Ada, somehow still alive, and somehow finds a rocket launcher and slides it down to Leon. Leon absolutely rocks Mr. X with a nasty rocket to the belly button, leaving only Lieutenant Dan's legs.
Well, you ain't got no legs, Lieutenant Dan.
Yes, I know that.
You make it down to the lower platform, with the train already moving because apparently Claire says "fuck you, Leon," and started the train anyway. Leon hops on one of the last few cars, pulling himself up with his only good remaining arm. After saying he misses Ada, even though he only knew her for 2 hours and she lied to him the entire time, Leon tosses the Umbrella digital bracelet off the train. I really hope you didn't need that again, dude. Thankfully he didn't. Leon walks into the main car and finds his true love, Claire Redfield, and a surprisingly nice child, given how shitty her parents are. Their reunion is interrupted by the fourth passenger. A Cronenberg wet dream version of William Burton has seemed to hitch a ride on the last train. Our pair of heroes go to take care of the big shiny bastard. Leon kicks the train car loose, and Claire jabs the ugly fucker right in his giant ass eyeball before watching the herpes meatball get completely singed and become the final kill on our kill count. William Burton, the G-Monster Cronenberg form. Now safe from their hellish experience, Leon, Claire, and Sherry walk down an empty road before seeing a truck driving towards them in the distance. Leon tells Claire and Sherry to get out of there. Leon, taking a defensive stance, thinking that maybe it's another infected truck driver, but no, he just gets flipped off by Sloppy Joe's trucker brother. And the story of Resident Evil 2 ends with Claire going off to find her brother Chris, and Leon and Sherry being picked up by the BSAA.
We have the authority to do as we please with you. You and that girl.
Just leave her out of this. She's an innocent.
An innocent who carries the G antibody. Don't worry. We're taking very good care of her. Bottom line is, you have the experience we're looking for. So if you want this to end peacefully, you really have only one choice. Work for us.
Our story starts off on the night of September 28, 1998. Jill wakes up from her nightmare. Jill gets a call from Brad Chickenheart Vickers telling her in a panic voice that she needs to get out of her apartment. But just as she hangs up the phone, the trash bag wearing nemesis Kool-Aid man his way through Jill's apartment. This seems to be a theme of the Remake series. I'm willing to bet that later on there'll be an explosion that tosses the main character into a car. Jill shoots Nemi the nemesis in his trash bag face because she can no longer get her deposit back, and that would piss anyone off. Jill runs from Nemi and uses her Spider-Woman senses to duck out of the way of Nemesis' game of rock toss. Jill breaks into her neighbor's apartment and tosses a bookshelf in front of the door because the power of reading, I guess. Too bad the bookshelf is empty. But the bookshelf apparently worked because Nemesis now Kool-Aids man his way through the floor instead. While trying to wiggle her way around the rubble, Nemi grabs Jill with his tentacle dick arm thing. Jill crudely circumcises that shit and makes her way to the alley to meet up with Brad the Chickenheart, who's just as useless as ever. Brad gets mad at some helicopters that don't stop and pick him up in an emergency. Kind of ultimate payback for what he did in Resident Evil 1, if you ask me. Brad's whining causes zombies to flood over the barricade, and Jill and Brad run into a nearby bar. Brad channels his inner Frank West and it doesn't work out. Brad tries to hold the door himself, but he's no Hodor from Game of Thrones.
And I've heard all about Hodor.
Hodor.
And the zombie takes a bite out of Brad's arm. I bet it tastes like chicken. And since this is the last time we see Brad alive, he starts off our list as number 1. Jill makes her way to the top of the parking garage to a waiting helicopter. Nemi Deus Ex Machina's a rocket right into the first escape chopper, and the explosion tosses our hero into a nearby car. Called that one. Jill GTA's a new ride that looks suspiciously like Ethan Winter's car from Resident Evil 7. And then she Fast and the Furious is Nemi off the top of the rooftop in one of the coolest action set pieces It quickly turns from Fast and the Furious to Terminator, and I'm just gonna let this scene play because it's really cool. After the really cool scene, Carlos makes his intro with the coolest insult.
Hey! Fuckface!
Nemi catches the rocket midair and says fuck the police, but since Nemi's tentacle dick has a cooldown period, Carlos shoots another rocket and makes Nemesis bend the knee. Yes, that is another Game of Thrones reference. Carlos and Jill make like a leaf and get out of there to the underground subway platform, where they meet up with the wounded commander of the UBCS, Mikhail Victor. After a short convo, Carlos gives Jill a radio and the goal of collecting survivors, but first she has to get to the power station to get the subway platform up and going to get those survivors out of the city to safety. Jill reaches street level and instantly collects one survivor. Jill quickly has her path blocked by fire, and since this game is a fetch quest with everything and anything possible to pad the runtime, you gotta go find a fire hose, instead of simply just turning on the fire hydrant and letting the water spray around freely, because that would do the same thing and cost very little time. Either way, the fire is put out and Jill runs to another UBCS agent, Murphy Seeker, who becomes number 2 on our kill count after catching a bullet in his head by this asshole, Nikolai. After a few more shit-eating words, he walks up the steps and fucks off out of sight. Jill makes her way to the power station. Since this is a game made by Japan, and they really like to have Jill and tentacle dick monsters do really obscene things, this Drain demo, which is, I guess, the name for it, takes a page out of Pornhub and deep throats Jill with his baby gravy, and this in turn slows Jill down for the next section of the game, because monster cum is extremely filling, or seemingly for no reason other than to pad the runtime, and in turn, this little 5-minute section now takes 20 minutes. But we're gonna skip that shit because, you know, that part really sucks. To get to the end, Jill spits out instead of swallows. With the power flowing, Jill flicks the switch and sends 1.21 gigawatts of electricity. It sends the mini mouth raper hive collapsing into the ground. Jill makes her way to the subway station and puts the tram filled with survivors to their final destination. You'll get that joke in a bit. After leaving the tram station, we run into the Nemi the Nemesis, who's porn-hubbing a helpless zombie and is turning him into a Granado from Resident Evil 4-like monster. Nemi chases Jill all the way to the subway platform. After running back into our resident dickhole traitor of the story again, Nemi interrupts and Jill spins off from the rest of the group and lures Nemi away from the survivors. Jill says the iconic line I've been joking about in every video.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
She says it in a completely wrong spot though, and maybe, just maybe if we're good, through the magic of editing, we'll fix that later. Jill escapes and Metal Gear Solids her way through the game's mandatory sewer level. The sewer, Jill has to fight off mutated forms of monsters from Tremors 2. After reaching the end with hardly any ammo, you come to the top of a ladder and Nemi palms Jill's head like a basketball. Instead of crushing her tiny human skull, he just tosses her aside and menacingly points a flame tosser at her. For dramatic timing, I guess. Nemi allows Jill to get up and run away because plot armor, I guess. Jill finds an open shutter, and since the Remake universe, shutters have this annoying thing to give the heroes troubles, it's somewhat of a rule, I guess, in this universe. She finally gets it down. After running to the rooftop and having a bullet versus flame boss fight. After dumping all of your ammo into Nemesis, I mean, damn, at this point, 3/4 of his body weight would be lead. He face plants into a fiery heap on the floor. As if on cue, like it's a game or something, the burning rooftop begins to explode, and Jill diehards her way off the top of the roof. And scaffolding platform that was magically there to catch her, and I gotta say, as a man who has a wife who wears tank tops, this is the most unrealistic part of the game. Jill goes through all this, tossing, rolling, and falling, and not a single time does one of her titties pop out of her shirt. When my wife wears a tank top, if she so much as bends over to pick something up, one of her baba booies is hanging out of her shirt. There's a reason she's only wearing them when we're alone. Jill finds her way to Kendo's gun shop and they are happy to see each other. Jill offers a ride on the subway out of town, but since we know Kendo's daughter Emma is infected, at this point Kendo refuses Jill's offer. He goes back into his apartment and tells Jill that there's a key to the alleyway hanging on the wall. Yet for some reason this alleyway is locked again in Resident Evil 2. It's almost as if someone is going behind us and relocking all the doors and doing all that shit. I don't know why someone would do that in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, but anyway, moving on. Nemi returns and he trades in his flamethrower for a laser-guided rocket launcher. Nemi stands on a few cars and fires a slow-mo rocket that does nothing but gives Jill a jump boost over some cars like it's his Halo or something. But Jill was using cheat codes and survives it all with her limbs still attached. Jill runs to Carlos, who is waiting by a gas station with a claymore trap. For the first time in the RE universe, the monster gets tossed into a car from an explosion instead of the hero. Before Jill and Carlos get behind the only shutter in Raccoon City that actually works, Carlos blows up a gas truck just to slow Nemi down. Jill and Carlos make their way back down to the subway platform. Jill, Mikhail, and Nikolai board the subway with the survivors while Carlos and Tyrell stay behind. Almost as soon as Mikhail puts it together that Nikolai is a traitor among them, Nemi makes his way on board the tram. Somehow he was completely unseen and he didn't have a ticket, but he still got aboard. And from what I could put together, Nemi killed 2 train cars full of survivors, totaling only about 8 passengers, and yes, that includes this guy that gets tossed right off the top. Just as Mikhail and Jill are about to move to the next car, Nikolai the dickhole locks the door and leaves. Jill and Nikolai locked in the car with the nemesis. Kyle tries to shoot Nemi to slow him down, only to be tentacle dick grabbed by Nemi. Mikhail gets a good insult in on Nemi, calling him a shitbird before blowing himself up on our kill count. The Mikhail special derails the subway just like a scene out of Final Destination 3. Before we get to see what happens next, we're put in control of Carlos of the RPD with Tyrell, which really shouldn't make any sense. Jill was the one was the RPD, but now it's Carlos. This is where I truly have a problem with RE3. For starters, this part of Raccoon City we get to explore is way smaller than the original, and Jill went to the RPD, not Carlos. We take control of Carlos when Jill was infected at Clock Tower, which is missing from the entire fucking game. Anyway, as Carlos, we walk the halls that Jill should be walking and come across the series' favorite Marvin, who's pointing a gun at an infected Brad at the entrance to the RPD. The path to Marvin is blocked and Carlos and Tyrell can't get to Marvin. Marvin puts 2 shots into Brad's legs. Marvin is about to triple tap Brad the zombie until he talks. Marvin is caught off guard and is bit on the side. Tyrell and Carlos break the planks and get into the main entrance just in time for Marvin to get inside and lock the doors. Carlos shoots and drops the infected Brad and takes his S.T.A.R.S ID card before following Tyrell into the building. Carlos makes his way from the main hall and comes across the 2 deaths I teased in our last kill count video. So we're going to add Lasagna Cop and Hanging Around Cop to the kill count via death by liquor. Carlos shoots his way through the halls of the RPD and leaves no bodies behind for Leon to find in a few hours for some reason. Carlos sets C4 on the bathroom wall and blows a hole through to the other side, instead of having something awesome happen like Nemesis chasing Jill and through the halls of the RPD and Kool-Aid manning his way through. The nifty RPG and the RPD. No, C4, none of these military experts can lockpick a door for some reason, but once the hole is made and Carlos is inside the S.T.A.R.S office, he makes contact with Dr. Bard on another weirdly HD webcam video from 1998. Anyone who remembers 1998 knows that even the best webcams were like 10 to 20 frames a second. After a short convo, Carlos gets a call from Jill on the radio, and this pointless side story comes to an end and we head back to playing as Jill. Jill survives a tram wreck like Bruce Willis in Unbreakable. Jill runs to the bridge, and Nemi exits the subway waving his arms while he's on fire like some kind of weird crazy goofball. It's not like he hasn't been on fire 5 times already. And he jumps in the Raccoon City River to cool off. Jill calls him a bitch, and Nemi apparently heard this and gets offended and jumps out of the river looking more like a werewolf xenomorph than Nemesis. Nemesis chases Jill across the rest of the bridge. Jill dodges some dog-like attacks as she gets a roundabout boss fight platform thing that she lands on. After wasting all your ammo again and using your grenade launcher rounds, Jill slowly walks over to the bullet-ridden Nemesis. And she's been through this before. Her raisin has gotten bigger and stronger since Resident Evil 1, but she apparently didn't see that Nemesis was going to wake up from his bullet-induced nap, and he grabs Jill's foot. Jill shoots him with her only remaining weapon that has ammo. Jill shoots the chain holding up the gate. The gate slams down on Nemesis' arm, acting like a guillotine, and lops off his left arm. Just as Jill is about to get up and get away, another tentacle dick comes into play again and uses it to spin off a little splint into Jill's arm, infecting her. Jill falls unconscious and the dick hole makes an appearance again just to be a dick hole before the screen fades to black. And this is another part that I really have a problem with. It takes Carlos roughly 12 hours to find Jill, who, if the timeline is correct, Jill who would have already been a zombie at this point and running into walls and shit, but you know, the fuck Carlos has been doing for 12 hours. I don't know if he's like taking one step every minute or what, but just to give you an idea, okay, just to give you a little bit of an idea, you can walk from Wall Street in New York City, okay, you could walk from Wall Street to Harlem in under 3 hours. In 12 hours, you can make that trip 4 times. How fucking far is the clock tower from the RPD in a Midwestern city? Well, let's look at it real quick. Okay, here's a map of Raccoon City. Okay, number 7 is the RPD. Number 3 is the clock tower. It's a straight north from the RPD. Roughly 1/3 of the distance from Harlem to Wall Street. And it took him 12 hours to find her. What the fuck? Carlos gives Jill a piggyback ride to the hospital and lays her on a gurney. You gotta go search the hospital for the good doctors and what Carlos says, some sci-fi bullshit. I call a 60 frame per second webcam in 1998 sci-fi bullshit, but apparently a voice reader that can pick up voices from voice recorders is sci-fi bullshit. Anyway, you gotta fight your way through my favorite monster in the series, the Hunters. These things are fucking terrifying. I remember back in Resident Evil 1, I was like, yeah, I have Game Shark, you can't touch me, and they one shot killed me. They legitimately jumped up in the air, swiped my damn head off, and I was like, well, ain't no fucking Game Shark code's gonna save you from that. You find Dr. Burke, who's been shot. Speaking of impossible webcam footage, Burke recorded himself blowing the whistle on an umbrella. After movie time, Carlos finds the purple vial dildo as antiviral thing. Carlos gives Jill a shot, not knowing what kind of dose to give her or anything, but everybody's a medical expert in this universe. An emergency alert comes on the TV saying that the city has fallen and anyone who is not a walking corpse soon will be unless they get the fuck out of the city. Zombies flood into the lobby and Carlos uses C4 on a pillar to block the entrance. After a short convo, Carlos heads down to the hidden lab under the hospital because Resident Evil's got a Resident Evil. There's always an underground lab and it always has a self-destruct. Well, I take that back. I don't think this one does. Jill has a nightmare of Carlos becoming infected and attacks Jill with a jump scare, waking her up from her tentacle dick nap. Jill rallies Tyrell to follow her down to the secret lab after walking into a random door as if by magic. Nemi beats them down there and tentacle dicks Tyrell. And after Jill helps the poor guy back to his feet, Nemesis got enough XP to level up because his tentacle dick no longer needs a cooldown, as Nemi spears his tentacle dick right through Tyrell's back instead of Jill for some reason because she's the primary target. This officially adds Tyrell to our kill count by death via tentacle dick. Jill hits the button like Dee Dee from Dexter and it looks like the shutters must have leveled up too. Jill makes an antivirus. Somehow she knows how to do that. But just as she does, a tentacle dick comes down from the ceiling and Nemesis is choking her. Jill uses a knife, stabbing at the tentacle dick that's wrapped around her neck. Speaking of which, she comes really close to stabbing herself in her own fucking neck, and Nemesis just tosses her aside. Because plot armor, I guess. After some more chasing, Nemi decides to David Carradine Jill again, and this time Jill uses her handgun to blow up a nearby fuel tank, and Nemi lets go of her. Again, why not drag her ass into the fire with you? Fuck, this game is short, but are we almost done? Let's skip a bit, shall we? Nikolai steals Jill's antivirus, and this is needed to prevent Raccoon City from being nuked, and he steps on her fingers, causing her to fall into another round pit-like boss fight area. I'm starting to see a pattern here. Carlos uses a crane to end the boss fight, cracking Nemi the Nemesis in his increasingly xenomorph-looking face. Jill climbs on the crane, looking how I feel, tired of this shit. Carlos dumps acid into the pit and melts Nemi into a red slimy sludge. Jill and the dickhole get into a standoff, and surprise, surprise, Nemi has something to say about it, smashing through the wall looking like a giant Tyrant turd. Thankfully, this lab has a railgun for some reason, but it helps us end this shit once and for all. Jill charges up the railgun looking like Lady Thor and shoots off a chunk of shit from Nemesis's turd-like face, and Xenomorph Nemesis looks mad about it. Jill's legs are still working. Somehow they're not a broken mess after cracking the concrete all around her, but apparently she withstood the shock of that really well. She has to push these mega batteries back in to recharge the railgun for a killing blow, aka pad the runtime for a few more minutes. Once recharged, Jill walks to the railgun that is bigger than her, and she walks right up to the Nemesis with no problem at all, sticks it right in his mouth, and makes a shitty date joke.
Next time, take the fucking hit!
Before blowing a hole from Nemesis V to his A. But like I said, I'm gonna fix this with the power of editing, so let's give Jill the line here that she should have said.
You want stars? I'll give you stars!
Much better. For the first time in Resident Evil history, Jill takes an elevator up instead of down. Jill gets to the roof and finds Carlos taking a nap. But psych, it was a trap set up by Dickhole. Why Dickhole didn't jump into the chopper and fly away, I have no idea. Another plot armor element, I guess. I mean, that would have been smart, but since Dickhole is a dickhole, he has to monologue just long enough for sleepy guy Carlos to wake up and save Jill like a damsel in distress by getting into a Metal Gear-esque ground fight. After a few blows back and forth, Carlos has Dickhole in a chokehold, and instead of breaking his fucking neck, he forces Jill to shoot him. And for some reason, the game makes you pull the trigger. And no matter what you're aiming at, you always hit the dickhole. I literally aimed at Carlos and still shot the asshole right in the shoulder. So it doesn't matter. I don't know why the game actually insists that you pull the trigger if the game outcome doesn't really matter. Jill gives Dickhole one last chance to not be a dickhole, and he refuses. So Jill and Carlos fly off and leave Dickhole Nikolai behind to be baptized by fire. So we'll add him to the kill count, I guess, even though he's more of a monster than a human. But, you know, rules are rules, I guess. As they're flying away, the nuke goes off and destroys one of the best fictional cities in gaming history. The chopper spins around for a bit, but comes back under Carlos's control, and the two fly off into the sunset, giving Jill a closing monologue. And thank fuck this game is over. I was really hoping you guys would enjoy this, but I've had to reshoot this. This is probably the second and a half time because, yeah, it's the editing software, like I said, been giving me problems. So this was a serious undertaking, and if I don't really sound that enthusiastic in this video, it's because I had to do it multiple times, and I really hate editing something multiple times. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. For more content like this, please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.